The BBC have bowed to pressure from journalists and booted Count Dankula from a new BBC TV show. Here's why it matters. Okay, so I could just do another video about Count Dankula talking about how he's not a Nazi, but we all know that he's clearly not a Nazi. He's the guy that made that viral video of his girlfriend's pug doing a Nazi salute. It was a joke. It was clearly a joke, and he's been dragged through the court system for years because of it. He's been fined 800 quid. He still faces going to prison because he's refusing to pay that unjust fine of £800. He's had his reputation dragged through the mud, all work opportunities destroyed, and his life turned completely upside down. But today instead, I want to talk about the violent, inhuman treatment that Dankula's received by the media and ponder what exactly it means. Now, you might have seen the recent story of Count Dankula being booted from a new BBC TV panel show because of public outrage and outcry. And I say story because it certainly is a story. On March the 3rd, Count Dankula tweeted this image of the front page of the Scottish Mail. That's an emotive headline if I've ever seen one. BBC gives TV job to Nazi hate criminal. I mean, notice how clever they've been with that title, by the way. They're not necessarily calling him a Nazi. They know very well that he's not. They would defend this title by saying that he's a criminal who espoused Nazi hate. Nazi hate criminal. But in reality, they're calling him a Nazi and a hate criminal. Very clever. I see what they're doing. But it's the background to this story that really concerns me the most. See, this started with journalists finding out that Dankula was going to be on this new BBC TV panel show, and they started asking questions about it. They have to give the illusion of fairness, right? I mean, Dankula refused to comment, of course, because he knew exactly what the mainstream press were going to do. He emailed them, responded, and said, nah, I'm not commenting. Now, these are the fair journalists who think that calling Dankula a Nazi hate criminal is accurate and fair. The media were plotting this whole thing from the beginning. There was no major public outcry about him being on this TV show. There really wasn't. But the media, of course, wanted there to be. That's the issue here. They write the story saying that a Nazi is getting a big BBC TV show. They put it on the front page, make a huge stink about it, make a massive claim. They claim that story is an outcry, and then they force the BBC to give in based on the outcry that they invented. That's exactly what happened. The BBC dropped Dankula from this new TV series after the so-called backlash. Backlash, of course, being a newspaper headline that called him a Nazi wrongly. Do you see how this works? Are you getting this? The media is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And I wonder how we got here. They create this outrage, then they report on the outrage that they created, and then they use the outrage, to ruin the lives of people that they just don't seem to like. It's inhuman. What kind of world are we living in when journalists get to decide who can and cannot have a job, who's worthy of being able to make money and raise a family? And why does the opinion of a snotty little bloody journalist matter so much to the BBC in the first place? I've met Dankula a couple of times now, and I can tell you he's definitely not a Nazi. In fact, he's barely political unless you count his comedy sets espousing the dangers of communism, or the benefits of communism as part of the show. He did a great set about that recently, you should watch it. And here's the thing, the suggestion that he's a Nazi at this point is not just wrong, it's cruel, because the media know it's not true and they just don't care about it. They're continuing to lie out of some weird vengeance against him, like some kind of crazy ex-girlfriend. They have it in for this man and nobody seems to know why. Another good example of this is a recent interaction that Dankula had with a guy called Mike Graham from Talk Radio on Twitter. This is where the irrational hatred for Dankula is really clear, because Graham's had it in for Dankula for a while. I've been following these tweets. The public tweets that I've seen him send to Dankula are mind-boggling. They're totally mental. And it's not what you'd expect from the press. But he has, in fact, Mike Graham called Dankula's wife ugly on multiple occasions. Just Why? Why are all these sad people ganging up to try and ruin this man's life? It's not like he's some controversial political leader. It's not like he's hurt anybody. He just tells funny jokes and hangs around with people that have different opinions to him. Now, I said I don't want to go over all ground here, and I won't. I think it's wrong what's happening to Dankula, but I think we also have to consider what this means for the rest of us as well. It's evident that the media literally control what we're allowed to see and hear, and this case illustrates that so perfectly, because they control what goes on the TV and in the papers, and in turn they control what their readers think about what everybody else thinks. Because if you fool one reader into thinking that the entire readership thinks that Dankula is a Nazi, then suddenly everybody thinks Dankula is a Nazi because everyone else can't be wrong, right? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that they've purposely created. And by the way, when I say they, I'm not talking about some grand conspiracy about who runs the media. I'm not talking about Rupert Murdoch. I'm talking about snotty, self-entitled little brats who work at places like the Scottish Mail, who think that they're God's gift to man for some reason. These are the ones trying to control you. Snotty little brats with journalism degrees from the University of Salford are ruining people's lives and telling you what to think. Don't let them do it. If you like that and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure you click that little bell symbol as well to make sure that you never miss another video again.